we have to be honest, many of us practice law is to make money, and there's nothing wrong with it.
Hello, I'm Kevin.
Hi, I'm Vince Tan, practicing lawyer in Malaysia. Thank you for this opportunity for this interview. I hope that I'll be able to share some little bit of my work with you all. So if you have any questions, please straight away.
Alright, okay, let's start. So for today, we'll be talking about on the topic of what exactly does an industrial relations lawyer do. So, Mr. Vince, like a quick search up of the definition of industrial relations is that it's basically another word for employment relationships that involves the complex interrelationships between your employer and your employee, your trade unions and your organizations and the state. So in your words, could you describe it in more detail to us, like what exactly it is when applied to the law in our country?
Short and simple is industrial relations. The first thing you should think of is white-collar workers, those who are on higher wages of above 2K, professions who are more capable of negotiating their own terms of contract. Plus they are freer to negotiate the terms of contract. And of course the industrial relation that is not just governing the relations between employer and employee per se, but also, like just now you mentioned, trade unions, the recognition of trade unions by employers. Also, what are the avenues that they can and the actions that they can take as a trade union to protect their own rights. Of course, in terms of Malaysia, you always hear about MTUC, Malaysian Trade Union Congress. That's like an umbrella body of trade unions for workers. And also the MEF, Malaysian Employers Federation, which represents the employer side. First things when it comes to industrial relations, we'll think of is the industrial court, which the party suing will be called a claimant, seeking for relief such as reinstatement of the job, compensation in lieu of reinstatement, and back wages. For how many months they're not employed, after termination, they get to claim that much months as compensation of wages. Ultimately, it is what we call, there's a cap. There's a cap, of course, 24 months for confirmed worker and 12 months for probation. So that's the gist of it. It's a quite interesting area to tap into. Perhaps if you have further questions, I'll address it accordingly later.
Alright, thanks. Well, thank you for the detailed description. So, exactly how did you end up in practicing in this field?
Yeah, I think that will probably be as a result of my pupillage here at the firm. I started my pupillage in 1st of March 2016 at this firm 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗲 𝗦𝘁. I was called to the bar on 3rd of February 2017. So throughout my 9 months and probably more than that, the period I've dealt with or exposed with industrial relations law. Probably a little bit of the background of I was a student activist back in university, so I deal with I'm quite sensitive towards workers' rights as a result due to political ideology and reasons. So we always fight out for minimum wage, better working conditions for the working class. So that's the reason why IR, industrial relations, is a law that relates or close to heart. And maybe by fate, I end up practicing it. Of course, later on I move on to my practice. I do a little bit of human rights, public interest matters, and criminal law. That was when I moved to 𝗂𝗺𝗺 & Co. Later on, I came out on my own, and recently just joined back the firm 𝗧𝗶𝗺�ธ์Partnership because they're expanding. So I came here to add value.
Oh, that's nice. And so what? So from here we can understand like it's because of your activities past in your university life. Yeah. That's what appealed to you for you to come to this area.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily by choice, but probably by fate, accident. Well, end up doing it in the firm that does it.
Oh,
right?
Oh, that's actually very nice.
Pick it up. Not rocket science. Quite fun to do.
So, what aspects of the job, or how to say, this particular field do you enjoy the most of it? That makes you devoted to this area instead of going to another field?
Probably because it is if you represented employee side, you're quite confident that more or less you'll be able to do something for the employee. Because in this jurisprudence, it's for the employee to win, the company to lose. So if you win the case, you get compensation or a certain amount of money, back wages for the client, who's an employee. But if you're representing a company, if you're helping the company to save money, that's about it. So it's rather straightforward, and you look at when the courts have interpreted the industrial relations cases. There are many human rights cases that are brought up later on at High Court stage or even Court of Appeal, because it's public interest in terms of interpretation of human rights, your right to livelihood, judicial review principles, administrative law when it goes up to judicial review. So this all relates to my earlier exposure back in the university as a student activist. I was studying in University of Malaysia then. Yeah.
Oh, that's quite impressive. University graduated from. Alright. So in your opinion, like after so many years practicing in this field, like how is the market for this area, like in terms of like saturation? Like are a lot of people practicing in it, or are there not? Then your employability rate, like post MCO and prior to MCO?
There will always be clients in this area because Malaysia is quite an industrialized country. As we embrace Industrial Revolution 4.0, although the use of technology will reduce the dependency on labor, many issues we can see today, even with the coming in of the COVID-19 pandemic and the MCO, Movement Control Order, retrenchment will always be there. These are one of the issues in employment law. Misconduct by employees, poor performance, insubordination, the list goes on for the reasons of termination. Thus, the issue always when it goes to industry court is whether there was the termination with just cause or excuse. Right? If it's not with just cause or excuse, employee wins, right? And is entitled to the compensation and back wages I mentioned before. So the market for lawyers, if you practice this area and proficiently well, you will be able to find clients and you will be able to make a living out of it. And the more bigger clients you handle will earn a much better reputation for yourself. Right? Of course, post MCO, or even still now at the recovery movement control order stage, the clients are coming in, but you have to understand the tough part of client paying. The issue of collecting fees has always been an issue in the legal profession, but we do what we can for our clients, and of course they do have to fulfill their end of the bargain, because all of us have to make a living, and we've gone on the days that we see how the profession evolves from in England until today. So it's very corporatized, the legal profession. We're heading towards that a direction where the profession is, like it or not, it's becoming a business. Alright, and we have to embrace it, and even more so in the post-COVID-19 period, which we see the digitalization of the legal profession, where courts have moved online, meetings conducted online, talks conducted online, and the use of technology, legal tech we call it, to help make practice easier. Research that when you take a look at all the books might take hours, you can complete within 7 minutes using legal software, engine search, those kind of things. Moving on for the legal profession, there are more and more lawyers coming up. So of course there will be competition, challenges, but if you're proficient in or efficient in your skills and present yourself well, win cases, of course we can't guarantee whether we win or lose, but argue out your case to the best of your ability, and your clients are comfortable with you, they'll come back and you make quite a okay living for a start. Of course, being a starting fresh young lawyer in it was tough, but as we move on the number of years, things will be smoother. You build your clientele and also your area. of law that you're practicing proficiently in and build a name for yourself. Yeah, I think that's about it. So no worries about lawyers not being able to put food on the table.
Right.
You just have to play your cards accordingly. But I do acknowledge that some lawyers find it tough, probably they haven't found a way to do things.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. So how does a day at work sounds like?
Morning you go to courts. That's a most basic thing. Come back in the afternoon, have your lunch, start your paperwork, or meeting clients. Your nights would probably be spent drafting documents. Weekends will definitely be occupied as well. Right. You do what you can to put food on the table, and it's not easy because of the long hours. This is often a frequent complaint on the working conditions of lawyers, the long working hours. Pay can be low when you're in your pupillage and early years of practice. But if you're good at scouting firms, there are firms that pay quite high, above average. So it's all about choices. The choices that you make will take you to somewhere in life, and that is where you develop, right? And always pray, hopefully things go smooth, because we will have our challenges. It's not an easy task, and this is something that needs to be made known. And the faster we embrace those challenges and overcome it, the stronger we are.
True. Yeah. So, like, as you said, like I currently understand, like currently there's tough times for everyone. So like, but I wanted to ask, like, what have been the challenges you face in this career line, like prior to the MCO effects and post this MCO?
I think the toughest part for lawyers is going into uncharted territory, or taking on cases which are very new or you have no experience for it. Then you have to do your research work. If you have guidance, it'll be a bit easier. But if you don't, you have to think for yourself, fend for yourself. There are the things that you have to do, and along the way you learn, pick up, learn the trick and trades of the profession, and you know what you can do and cannot do. You have to acknowledge that, and what you can do will later on be your specialized area of law, and you specialize it, and you know what you don't want to do, then you don't have to touch it later on. Right? So it's sort of identifying strengths and weaknesses. For law students, you have to pass all your subjects, and no doubt, but through the years of study, you will find that you're more good at this subject compared to others. You like this subject more, and later on in practice, you try to practice in areas that you like, right? Because passion will take you a long way.
Yeah. Understand. Passion. Yeah. So, like, so with all this, what have been the highlights of your career then?
Done a few high-profile cases which often I hold is close to my heart. Probably challenging statutes which are unconstitutional, provisions of law which are unconstitutional. So this is what we call a constitutional challenge against Act of Parliament. The latest I think we did was the challenging Section 7(1) of the Printing Press and Publication Act, which gives the power to the Home Minister to ban books. So we're challenging the power of the Minister to ban books. That's one of the highest profile case that I handled. Besides the other cases, Peaceful Assembly Act was representing former Deputy Minister of Agriculture, 𝗧𝗶𝗺𝗀, the MP of Petaling Maria Chin, and also Mandip Singh. Those are he's an activist with 𝗶𝗺𝗀 that time. So this is the highlights of my practice. Of course, there are many to name. I can't remember all. Which one to start with?
Well, that's quite a list of achievements you got there.
Just bread and butter. You have to do what you have to do.
Man. So, like, we are going on to a section where it's more about asking your advice on so many years of practice for like aspiring law students and lawyers. Like, what is your definition of success?
I think years of experience, my colleagues would be more years of practice than me. In what would be my advice thus far is, I think idealism plays a very important role. What you want, your ideals, because students, they are rather pure in nature at first, because you have yet to be corrupted by the pragmatism and the realities of life. It is such idealism that will later define who you become later on. Whether you allow that idealism to be corrupted by society, or do you are strong enough to push through your idealism in society. You will see old people come and tell you things like you shouldn't do this, what you should do, what you should not do. You see a system trying to control you for their own benefits, because there will be certain groups wanting to preserve status quo. And being young, you will always have a different set of ideals, asking for change of things that you feel is not right in society, and you will take action to make a difference. It's about defending that idea and pushing it out. Of course, compromises will have to be done along the way, but yes, those ideals that you have when you were young will make you take certain actions, will lead to your destination or path later on in life. Yeah.
Wow, that's quite big. Yeah. Wow, that's quite big. Then, like, from this, how do you stick to your ideology? Like, definitely compromises are needed, but how do you exactly strike a balance between sticking to it rightfully and not to compromise yourself corruptly?
You have to deal with times and have to deal with situations. There will be a certain times requiring you to act on principles. At times, you need to know it's a give and take. You're compromising a small part for a better future. These are things that you have to consider. There's definitely corruption, there's definitely abuse of power, there's definitely wrongdoings in society, especially when you step out into the real world. You will see all of this. You will be faced into a position where do you take a stand or voice out against these wrongdoings or corruption, or do you compromise by remaining silent so that you can get certain benefits at the end of the day, short-term benefits. That is a decision that you have to make, and that decision that you make will show your character. Each and every one of us are often affected by our surroundings. Surroundings will change a person. Thus, the circle of friends or peers, that are comrades that you mix with, will often and not affect or shape your idealism, and the challenges that you face will shape realities that comes into place, and the balance between idealism and reality comes into place. Okay. Sorry for talking like a philosopher.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's recorded. People can replay that to digest it. So, like, with all this talk, then where do you see yourself in 5 years or maybe 10 years from now?
Well, every lawyer would like to drive his first Mercedes-Benz. Me too, share that same aspiration. Probably continue practicing, do a little bit of business. There's no substitute for making money. And hopefully I'll be able to do more interesting cases, and taking more cases to the appellate courts, High Court, Court of Appeal, Federal Court. These are important to establish yourself as a decent lawyer.
So, for our last question of this interview, do you have any advice you would like to give for aspiring law students and lawyers?
I think what you did back in law school actually will help shape your direction in the future. Idealism against reality. I remember my own experience back in law school. I was in a student activist. My main motivation was to do something back for society. It wasn't so much about graduating on time or all that. It's about using whatever I have to give back towards society.
Uh-huh.
And I participate in a lot of protests, giving talks, public speaking, lobbying, advocacy work, hoping that I can bring real social change. And that is something I still do today. Trying to think of me graduating was actually creating more stress. So that was a perfect diversion about doing something that I like, I love. That becomes a motivation for me to carry on. And if you manage to bring the idealism, the motivation you have back in law school into practice, you realize that things are quite fruitful. There's this Japanese concept called ikigai, a balance between everything, of what you want, what you aspire of doing, what you're good at doing, what pays the bills. A balance needs to be struck in all of this, and that center is what we all should achieve. So you have to know what you like from the start and try to turn your hobbies into a profession. I think that can be the best motivation and advice I can give.
Wow, yeah, quite true. Alright. Okay, thank you so much. We have reached the end of our question. Thank you so much. Thank you for agreeing to do this.
I hope that my small advice, few advice can help certain students become who they are meant to be, and hopefully do some good for society.
Yeah, definitely like the ones here really feel very there's a lot to take on. We'll rewatch the videos and to try to apply it to our life as well. Thank you so much.